Who are the biggest free agent names on the quarterback market for 2023 beyond Lamar Jackson and Daniel Jones? And what do we think about the possibilities of Aaron Rodgers and Derek Carr being traded? It's time to break it down right here, right now, as you can get another offseason preview. Only on Locked On Fantasy Football.
Our Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer, and after this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for SportingNews.com. We're getting into it slowly. Super Bowl 57. We just had the Pro Bowl Skills Challenge, so got to get all that out of the way. The Senior Bowl is about to end. That's even more significant here for the NFL with the draft prospects. And we did break down the mock draft there for you, the latest. It will keep changing, and it's changed this week after what we saw in Mobile and some of the stock rising there. So if you missed that couple of shows there, check it out. The one half of the mock draft, second half as well, are up all the way through picks 30 as we wait for the Chiefs and Eagles to figure out the last two picks. And then took a break also to break down the retirement of Tom Brady and what it means for the Bucs. And that's just one of many things we need to break down for you in the NFL offseason related to the Bucs. They're going to be looking for a new quarterback, and there's a lot of guys out there at different levels to consider in different ways here on the free agency market and as well trade-wise. I mean, there's going to be some mega deals made as well. We saw Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson get traded last year to a lesser degree. We saw Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz. Those two didn't work out as much. Watson was suspended for 11 games. And Russell Wilson, we know, had a lot of struggles there until he found a new coach this year, Sean Payton. So we'll see if the moves of this year quarterback pan out a little bit better. We'll break those down for you on today's show. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We're free and available to all platforms. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, let's dive right in, and we'll focus on the two biggest names here that are available that don't have a contract from their current teams right now. There's a tag and trade scenario with both, of course, that's in play, and that would be the smart move to make here. But again, that's a little bit of a risk here. If they don't want to lock into that highest level of contract, they could just agree to the tender and go there, and another team may not want to pay that. So we'll see if that breaks down for the Ravens and Giants that way. But Lamar Jackson and Daniel Jones, these are the two best free agent options at quarterback by far for their youth and upside here with their passing and running. So very similar. Lamar Jackson has a better track record. We know he's won the NFL MVP award, and he's dynamic and special. But Daniel Jones had a pretty strong season here, passing and running. Cleaned up those turnover issues under Brian Dable and Mike Kafka. So there's a lot of appeal now for Daniel Jones. The Giants are thinking about how best to lock him up. Do they want to pay him close to that 40 to 45 million that a lot of quarterbacks are making right now, or do they want to go 32, 33, somewhere there? I think right now the supply and demand of the quarterback says it's probably going to push to the latter number. Maybe that's uncomfortable for the Giants because Daniel Jones has had one really good season. That was this year, and still did put up monster numbers. He was efficient. He didn't turn over the ball and leaned on a limited receiving core to really get the most out of him. So there's a lot of things you like about Daniel Jones, but is he worth paying in that $40 million range, one of the highest paid quarterbacks, just because of supply and demand? That's what the Giants need to consider. Do they feel comfortable moving on at quarterback? That's the other thing, is what are their alternatives? They're picking 28th overall in the draft, may not get the right guy that they're looking for. Should Will Levis and Anthony Richardson join CJ Stroud and Bryce Young and being off the board? So those are things that the Giants need to consider. The Ravens, they can get probably really high value for Jackson in a tag and trade scenario, probably multiple first rounders, a little blockbuster deal the way that we saw Wilson and Watson go down last year. He's that special again. He could change the course of an entire team with his exciting playmaking. He's at the highest ceiling. We know when he's on, he can really lead a team and carry its offense pretty well here. So Lamar definitely is in a different stratosphere than Daniel Jones in terms of the expected value of the contract. But again, Jones' supply and demand could push his value up a little bit more, while Jackson is going to try to be that $50 million man as well, following Patrick Mahomes and some of the recent deals we've seen here, including Josh Allen from the same draft class for Lamar. So now let's look at the scenario. If Jackson stays with the Ravens, he's going to do it without Greg Roman. Will they upgrade the receiving core? Will Sean Bateman come back healthy to help beyond Mark Andrews? So they need to get some more weapons there. I think they could continue to shore up the offensive line. I like Tyler Linderbaum, but they could look at a tackle there to push them a little bit forward. So I think Lamar, if he stays with the Ravens, I think he's that QB1 that we know in terms of average points per game. The durability is a little bit of a question mark with Jackson going forward. But if he goes to another team, say the Falcons, I think he has even more upside. Because look at the Falcons. They're a heavy running team with their guys. They also have Drake London and Kyle Pitts, a baseline of receivers there. So the team that's going to aggressively go after Jackson is going to cater to him and have an offense tailored to his strengths with his running and ability to push the ball downfield. So the Falcons would be the ideal situation for Lamar. I think the Jets would be also pretty decent because they got weapons, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson. They want to run the ball as well as they make the transition to Nathaniel Hackett now from Michael Floor. So Aaron Rodgers' former QB connection in Green Bay, he went to Denver, didn't work out with Russ Wilson. He's with the Jets. But the Falcons would be the best landing spot here, even better than the Ravens. But if he stays in the Ravens, he's got that high rushing floor and he's good to go. Daniel Jones, surprise in fantasy. I mean, he did enough running wise to get into the back end QB1 conversation this year. So maybe the Giants just say, okay, we're going to stay the course with him. We got to get him receiving help. And I have them taking Kayshon Boutte there late in the draft at number 28 in the first round. There's a lot of good wide receiver depth, playmaking depth here. There's a lot of free agents here. Richie James, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard. All those guys are not going to be back. And Isaiah Hodgins basically the only receiver they can trust at this point. And even that is limited. He's not like he's a top flight, consistent receiver anyway. So they're going to have to find a bona fide number one if they keep Daniel Jones. And I think given that they won't have to spend the exorbitant money, the wide receiver class of free agents are not that good, that they're going to look at the Jones and go in a direction, try to keep him. So again, Jones could also end up in a place like Atlanta or Carolina, somewhere that would really cater to him. But I think he's arrived now as a more efficient, seasoned quarterback here. Finally, after going sixth overall behind Kyler Murray in 2019. All right, so there you have it. So Jackson and Jones still have plenty of upside because that running floor that they preside over here in fantasy football. So love that for them. So we'll see where they end up. And very curious. I would just say right now, the safe bet says that Lamar stays a Raven and Daniel Jones stays a Giant. But we thought things were going to go different with some players last year. So stay tuned there. It's just getting started with the two biggest names out there. We told you at the top that this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy for you to assemble the winning team you need for your small business. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 23 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals as a company and get the right individuals to get on the page with that. And all small businesses need that togetherness, and LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you find the right mix. It's going to help you find and quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs and targeting tools. LinkedIn Jobs goes beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates, identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs, and on your job qualifications, all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Okay, let's continue the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football. We're going to look at the next quarterbacks that are available in free agency, and we have a interesting tier of the guys. I mean, Geno Smith The Seahawks intend to bring him back. He's a 32-year-old elevated backup here for them. He had a very fine season. He had the most passing yardage of any Seahawk in history, even more than Russell Wilson, getting well over 4,000 yards. So I think they feel comfortable with him. Sort of DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, all their weapons. He facilitated the running game well, didn't turn over the ball. So Pete Carroll wants him back, but I think, again, they would be looking at maybe another quarterback. They got 2 first-round picks here, 5 and 20. Do they think about stashing a quarterback behind Geno Smith and developing? Do they just turn the page to a young quarterback? Now that Smith is limited as a bridge. He was a very successful bridge, good comeback player of the year story here. But in terms of pushing the Seahawks forward with a rebuilding roster, I'm not sure Geno is the guy beyond a bridge here. So something to watch out there for and how much the Seahawks want to reinvest in Geno Smith despite the fine fantasy and reality season he just had. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be out in San Francisco. Kyle Shanahan said as much there. So they're going to look at Trey Lance healthy from his broken fibula. You're also going to have what Brock Purdy can do coming off the elbow injury. So that's going to be your battle to start. So they're not going to keep 3 quarterbacks this time. With Purdy more established, so Garoppolo is going to be on the move. Does he end up in a backup role with the Dolphins? But that's not the typical backup role, right? Tua Tagovailoa has had the concussion and durability history, so Garoppolo could be elevated quick. And that reunion with the former 49ers offense coordinator Mike McDaniel, so something to look at. I mean, the Buccaneers are going to have an opening. We know Blaine Gabbertson, free agency. Kyle Trask is still developing QB. Tom Brady is retired, so that's an option. The Saints could look at Jimmy Garoppolo, maybe move on from Andy Dalton and James Winston, try to clean up and get a little bit more streamlined at quarterback there. So those seem to be the best destination. The Jets had this momentum early with the situation with Mike LaFleur and running the same type of offense, but now that doesn't seem to be the best place for Garoppolo, as they're also pursuing a bigger name in Aaron Rodgers in New York. So we'll have more on Rodgers and those rumors, as well as where Derek Carr could be going. The Raiders are also a possibility, of course, for Jimmy Garoppolo, where Derek Carr likely to be traded. He was benched in favor of Jared Stidham, former Patriot. So Garoppolo, we know, was the previous former Patriots backup to Tom Brady before he got traded to the 49ers in 2017. So Garoppolo could end up back with McDaniels starting in Las Vegas next year. And that would be an interesting team to watch for sure, as they save some money from Derek Carr, maybe shore up other parts of their team. Jacoby Brissett had a really strong season and playing those 11 starts when Deshaun Watson was suspended for the Browns. So good situation here. He's bounced around. I don't think he's going to end up back in Miami or Indianapolis here. So maybe the Buccaneers consider him. The Raiders also might be interested. So I think those are the 2 teams that you look at. So Buccaneers, Raiders, and Jets are going to come up a lot and looking at free agency and at trades for their team quarterback solutions. Some teams that you won't see that with probably are the Panthers. They're picking 9th overall. They're going to target a quarterback in the draft. And then at number 1, you have the Texans, and number 4 at the Colts. So some order of Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud goes there with Will Levis, and then Anthony Richardson becomes the first-round wild card behind those teams. And then a little later in the draft, you look at Tanner McKee and Hendon Hooker. These are day 2 type picks at quarterback as well, a little bit more developmental than those other guys that could go in the first round. So we'll see where Jacoby Brissett ends up. But the Buccaneers might be a pretty good fit here for what they want to do as they transition away from the GOAT and Brady. Sam Darnold, we'll see. I think he could return to the Jets, maybe. We'll see if that plays out. There's some other interesting backup situations they're developing. A lot of backups that are out here. Trevor Lawrence needs a new backup, potentially C.J. Beathard. Kirk Cousins needs a new backup with Nick Mullins headed into free agency. We also have Cooper Rush and Mike White are also free agents. So a lot of these guys, if super subs, may get some shots elsewhere. I don't know if any of them have Gardner Minshew style upside if they can get into a starting role at any point with their new team. But Sam Darnold, someone to watch there. Baker Mayfield, another option for the Buccaneers if they hire Todd Monken, their former offensive coordinator, who was at Georgia with Stetson Bennett. If they hire him, Monken liked Mayfield a little bit when they were with Cleveland together. So something to watch out there. Taylor Heinicke is just going to be a guy here that he's going to move on. The biggest takeaway there is that Sam Howell looks like he's going to be tabbed to be the Commanders' new starting quarterback. They can easily get out Carson Wentz's contract. So Wentz will add to this list as well. Andy Dalton, as he bounces around again, he's had stints with the Cowboys and Bears and Saints, leaving that long-time starting gig with the Bengals. We'll see. Maybe the Saints like what he did down the stretch and stick him with him as a bridge quarterback versus going for Garoppolo or Derek Carr or someone else out there. Teddy Bridgewater, we'll see if he can have another landing spot. Maybe it's back in Minnesota behind Kirk Cousins. I don't know if Miami will be able to keep him. Cooper Rush did enough there that he might get some consideration for some of these other teams. Maybe goes to Jacksonville and helps there with Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence instead of C.J. Beathard. Something to watch here. And Mike White, Jets, you look at him. I'll see when I believe it that he's going to be trusted too much. Maybe an option for the Colts to kind of create a little bit of a competition there with their rookie quarterback. So a lot of interesting guys out there, backups as well as mid-level bridge guys to consider. But really the only three starting guys that we know from last year, Jackson, and Jones, and Smith. There's two more starting guys we need to talk about from 2022. That'd be Aaron Rodgers and Derek Carr. What might happen with them in their impending offseason? Big day for Derek Carr, not getting the bonus that he's looking for the Raiders, so they're going to move on from him. That was pretty clear when they were resting him in the last couple of games looking for a trade. So interesting stuff to look at there as teams change their fortunes or try to get better quarterback. Go to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Meet with an expert who will do them for you. TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you so you can do not taxes. Show your eyes things that are not taxes. Unpack a moving box of not taxes. Taste not taxes. Sing not taxes a lullaby. Hope not taxes. Sleeps through the night. Grab a saddle and ride not taxes into the sunset. With TurboTax, an expert will do your taxes from start to finish, ensuring your taxes are done right, guaranteed, so you can relax. Feels good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? Come to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. That's Intuit TurboTax. Visit TurboTax.com. Full service products only. Video meeting while expert does your taxes required. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, it is time to close the show and the week here at Locked On Fantasy Football. Getting a little bit out of the way before we focus on Super Bowl 57. We do have to look at the running back rankings and free agents. They're pretty intriguing, of course, with Saquon Barkley out there, Tony Pollard. So some notes there to look at. So we'll do that on Monday's show there. So continue to look at our free agents. Not so great at wide receiver and tight end. So we'll see. Maybe we'll break that down as part of a bigger thing for you. But for sure, we'll talk about the running backs on Monday. So check us out as we talk more free agency before we set the table here for the Super Bowl between the Eagles and Chiefs next week with all the things you need to know on that game. All right, let's close here looking at Aaron Rodgers. He's on the block. The Jets seem to be ready to go all in to move on from Zach Wilson. There, Joe Flacco, Mike White are also free agents. So Zach Wilson, they're going to try to dump. He could be very much Josh Rosen by the Jets, one and done here. But Rodgers is definitely appealing. They did hire Nathaniel Hackett. We know that the Broncos probably did that last year to try to draw on Rodgers. Does it work this year for a different team? But I think the Jets are a little bit more appealing. They've got a good defense. Robert Saleh scheming that like in the 49ers style. Now that DeMeco Ryans is gone from San Francisco into Houston. So Houston is going to rebuild their defense, but we know San Francisco style is already in place with the Jets with Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner and a great defense there that could potentially win a championship with a quarterback. And you look at the weapons here, Garrett Wilson, you got two tight ends and Cedar Zama, Tyler Conklin. You've got Elijah Moore possibly being a big factor going forward. Corey Davis, we'll see if they keep him or upgrade a wide receiver. Their offensive line could be pretty good if Mekhi Becton comes back healthy, along with Elijah Vera Tucker. They're two young offensive guys up front, so that could be decent. Here, they could also bring back Connor McGovern at center. So the Jets have some appeal, especially when you throw in Breece Hall, hopefully coming back healthy, and Garrett Wilson. Start to have some weapons, things that Rodgers would like to be featured with him. So it really is an attractive destination. We don't know what's going to happen with Josh Allen and the Bills. They're fading a little bit. Mac Jones, Patriots, a bit of a crossroads as they switch offensive coordinators to Bill O'Brien. So things definitely are opening up here for Rodgers if he wants to leave Green Bay. And we know what the Packers are going to do. They're going to simply solve quarterback by turning to Jordan Love, who they saw enough of to think that he might be ready to handle their offense going forward as they go a little bit more with their youth movement under Matt LaFleur. So something to watch there. But Rodgers, I think, definitely is in play now for that team. But he was also rumored for the Raiders. Why? Because Devontae Adams was asked in, I think, social media, and he said, would you think that Aaron Rodgers is going to be his quarterback? He has a good feeling about it. So I don't think Devontae Adams is going to leave the Raiders. So does Rodgers come into play for them as well? And that makes a lot of sense. We know the comment that Tom Brady made several seasons ago where he said if Aaron Rodgers was in Josh McDaniels' offense, and Aaron Rodgers would put up monstrous numbers. So there's that thought there. I know it's a new offense, but you look at what Las Vegas have. They have Max Crosby on the other side. They can put up some numbers here. You have potential to build that defense there. You have Devontae Adams to start. You have Darren Waller still under contract. You have Hunter Renfrow, a key target. We'll see if they upgrade the second target. And of course, you have Josh Jacobs on the backfield, who might be returning now on a deal. A pretty good run blocking line. They could upgrade in pass protection. I know the Raiders are a little bit farther away than the Jets from competing because their defense is not as good. But look at Aaron Rodgers. They have a chance to go up against Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert twice each, as well as Russell Wilson. I mean, that's appealing for Rodgers. And I think all of a sudden the Raiders can get a lot better, and they're going to draw some people if Rodgers ends up in the desert, closer to his home state of California there with Las Vegas. Speaking of Las Vegas, Derek Carr definitely looked like he's going to be out here. He can't feel good about the way they benched him at the end of last year. It just seemed so unceremonious and seemed odd. I know he was not playing all that great. So Derek Carr probably on the move. Now, Dennis Allen was his first coach in the NFL in 2014. Carr could help them transition with Dalton being a free agent. They're probably going to move on from James Winston, New Orleans. So that is a destination. The Buccaneers could also look at Derek Carr again to replace Brady, because some of the things Carr does, and he just was indoctrinated into the Brady offense under McDaniels that he played for a long time, so he can make a transition as well to what the Buccaneers are doing. But keep in mind, it's not Byron Leftwich and Bruce Arians style anymore. It's maybe more conducive to Derek Carr being more efficient, not dependent on the no risk and no biscuit. That's not the type of quarterback Carr is anyway. I mean, he's a calculated guy. He's going to throw to open guys. He doesn't take chances downfield and just push it that way. So I think Carr needs a little bit more structured offense, balanced to really get the most out of him. And Tampa could provide that, but New Orleans also has some pieces there with Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara on their offensive line. So good stuff looking at, but I think Aaron Rodgers, I think there's about a 50% chance he's traded here. Derek Carr, we're going to put it at 90. I think he's on the move for sure here pretty soon. And Carr, I just don't think they can repair that relationship after the way things ended in the first year with Daniels with Carr on the bench for the Raiders. And remember, he left the team and took a break from the team a little bit before coming back. So he did not sit well with him. I think he needs a change of scenery anyway to guarantee he'll start, especially with what's going on with the Raiders and the potential pursuit of Garoppolo here with Brady not in the mix and Rodgers also in play for Las Vegas's aggressiveness here in the 2020 offseason. So there you have it. There's a breakdown here of what we saw. And looking at with the free agency class of quarterback, there's a lot of running back we'll have to explore there. Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley among the big names there. Devin Singletary, David Montgomery as well. So a lot of notable fantasy football names. We need to figure out what may happen with them and what happens with their current teams if they move on in free agency. We'll do that on Monday's show. So here's a breakdown of the quarterbacks. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. Subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast and get daily conversation on the biggest NFL stories, including Super Bowl 57, including in-depth analysis of the biggest games with NFL predictions every Friday. That's this Friday right now. Locked On NFL available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Have a great weekend. Enjoy it. Rest up. Enjoy it without the Super Bowl, and we'll catch you next week talking all things, mostly all things, Eagles and Chiefs after free agency.